Hey everyone, just a quick heads up. Today's episode has been sitting on a thumb drive for a little over a year. With the passage of time, parts of my conversation with Mike are going to sound a bit anachronistic, particularly as we talk about the states of Robotech and Cowboy Bebop. Otherwise, it's as fresh and relevant today as the day it was recorded. So, here we go.
So, about how long should we take today, Neil?
No more than an hour, I think. I mean,
Okay.
I just had to kind of refresh myself on the movie because I'm like, okay, making some notes. Oh my God, I don't remember any of the characters' names. So I have them all listed in front of me, so I may mispronounce one or two of them, but I'll just have to be the way it is.
Okay. I will interchangeably be calling them Gally and Alita. So,
I understand.
all right, ready to go when you are.
All right. Hey everybody, welcome to another Big Bad Movie Show. It's going to be a topic show this month, not a commentary, although I'll probably have one later anyway. But anyway, enough digressions. With me today is the Birdman, Mr. Mike. How you doing?
All right, it's fantastic to be back on this show. I know the last time we talked about, what was it, Street Fighter, I think it was?
We talked about a bunch of video game movies and all sorts of crap.
Yeah. And this one kind of came about because you and I were like going back and forth on what anime to kind of talk about. And originally we were going to do something else, but because of my recent political affiliations, I'm like, yeah, well, can't do that because reasons. We picked something else, and I'm really glad we picked this instead because I forgot how much I fell in love with this particular property, and I've got such a history with it. And I literally just watched the live action adaptation for the first time about 2 hours ago, and I am remarkably impressed.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna say the same thing. Is that I watched the way I did it is I watched the anime. I was like, okay, that was interesting. And then I watched the movie that just came out a couple years ago. I was like, wow, that's significantly more coherent than the anime that I watched. In fact, I had to go back to the anime, and all of a sudden, like a lot of things that I didn't quite understand the first time around, I'm like, okay, now I kind of get what's going on because the anime kind of rushes through a lot of things. It tries to adapt the manga in a way, but it's doing it in like an hour, so it's like really condensed down. Whereas the movie, interestingly enough, even though it like pulls stuff from other arcs and kind of tries to fit it in, it's strangely enough it's more decompressed and it's much more coherent, easier to understand.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know what exactly it is the hell we're talking about Alita Battle Angel or Battle Angel Alita if you happen to be checking out the ADV dub, which hasn't been in print since like the early 2000s. I first saw the OVA for this back in 95, 96 from my local Blockbuster. And when it was done by the ADV group, so that's the same people who did Ava. So this is like the Evangelon's greatest hits because Amanda Wynn, aka Ray, plays Gally. Spike Spencer plays Yugo. I'm pretty sure the guy that plays Vector is Gendo. And I think Tiffany Grant's in there as like a random voice. So basically it's the greatest hits of the 90s anime club. And it kind of caught my attention back then because it was one of the first anime OVAs that I'd ever seen before. And I forgot that each episode was only 30 minutes. And it's one of the first punk ones I'd ever seen. The only one I'd seen before that was, I think, Akira and maybe Black Magic M66.
Right.
Maybe Angel Cop, but I'm not sure. So seeing this was a pure trip down nostalgia lane because it really didn't pick up a lot of steam until it really hit DVD in the late 90s. And then more people are like, wow, this is really awesome. Now the mangas, I actually had them. Somebody gifted them to me about 10 years ago, and I sold them off. And I really wish I didn't, because I found out they're worth a shit ton, and I sold them for like $5. So I'm stupid. So thank you, Facebook Marketplace. And it's something that James Cameron wanted to have happen. Like he got turned on to it by Guillermo del Toro, and I want to say the early 2000s. And Guillermo del Toro and James Cameron were like, hey, this is awesome, we should make this. And then Cameron he's been trying to have this movie made since like the early 2000s. Then finally, I think it was like Robert Rodriguez and all of them got involved, and James Cameron was off making a bunch of money off the Avatar sequels and Terminator bullshit. And finally, it all came together in like 2019. And it's probably the best anime adaptation I've ever seen. It gives me a real hope that when Cowboy Bebop eventually comes out in some form or another, it'll be just as good. Or if the Akira movie ever gets off the ground, it just kind of surprises me. Of all the anime adaptations, Battle Angel was the first one to have like over $150 million devoted to its budget and to actually have it be fairly successful. I think it made like $400 million in theaters. And there was talk of a sequel, but since the Disney acquisition, they don't know. I was in a private conversation with some friends of mine, and I think there was a rumor they were going to do it as a Disney Plus series, which I think would be really fantastic. Even if it was only like six episodes every 2 years, I'd be fine with that. I mean, even if they were like only half an hour, because it's not like Disney doesn't have more money than God. I mean, look how much money they put into The Mandalorian and WandaVision and all that shit.
Right.
So like, I was just so surprised at how well this universe came to life. And it kind of ties into something else that I'm a big fan of. Like this last year, we had Cyberpunk 2077 come out from CD Projekt Red to varying degrees of success. But it showed us a really well realized cyberpunk future. And while I was watching Battle Angel Alita, Alita Battle Angel, I'm looking at it thinking, wow, this proves that you could pull off a cyberpunk movie and it wouldn't look stupid. There was a fight scene in an alleyway where Ito, or Christopher Waltz, who's not a Nazi in this movie, is fighting two of these not bounty hunters, these two enemy cyborgs. And this one girl rips off her coat, and she's got basically what are essentially mantis blades, and she's trying to kill Alita, aka Gally, which I'll use those two names interchangeably because certain things were changed from the OVA to the movie and the manga. And I was like, wow, if they can make mantis blades look not stupid in a movie, I would really like to see a cyberpunk movie at some point. But I know Netflix is doing a cyberpunk anime sometime in the next year or two. So yeah, I mean, I'm pleasantly surprised by how well things were treated. And as you kind of mentioned, Neil, the anime kind of skips over a lot of things. Like, I was doing a little bit of research before the show, and it turns out the original writer of the manga considered the anime a fairly low priority, which is why we only got the 2 episodes, which is really unfortunate because I think that would have been a wonderful 10 to 12 episode series. But 2 episodes to get your kind of feet wet is, I think, a wonderful thing, because there's so much world building there. They talk about the floating city of Zalem, I think it is. How there's the hunter warriors who are essentially bounty hunters who hunt down enemy cyborgs. There's like this organ legging market. There's this big info dump at one point, and they describe how most human limbs can be replaced, and stuff like synthetic stuff can be implanted in your body, so much so that you don't have to worry about stuff like sore stomachs, diarrhea. You can eat as much as you want, just bring an extra kind of garbage bag or whatever. You still have to worry about dementia and old age. You're not immortal, but you can do almost anything you want. The only thing that can't be replaced is the human spine. So there's people who will take literally the back from under your shirt. In the movie, they say there's people who will rip off your like cyber mods off you, which is not unlike something they do in Cyberpunk 2077. There's an entire gang, the Maelstrom gang, who pretty much do nothing but cyber mods. And if you got something cool that they want, they'll take it off you. So I don't know. It's just, I haven't seen really interesting cyberpunk world building like this in a really long time. And I was so surprised about the quality of the production design, because I got this on Amazon. I actually got this for sale like a couple weeks ago for like $5. And there's a couple of different special features from the movie that I didn't realize how much they explain about it. Like in the world of Alita, evidently there was a civilization, or not civilization, there was like tech that existed 300 years in the future. And there was a war called the Fall where there were a bunch of floating cities, but only Zolom's the last one left. How there was like enemy cyborg soldiers who had like their own fighting style. There was like all these nanotech bodies, which eventually Alita picks up in the movie, and she becomes like kind of like a super soldier. Her body's powered by like this little antimatter reactor. And it's really friggin' fascinating. And randomly Edward Norton has a cameo, but he doesn't talk. He just plays a character called Nova, who I guess is some kind of a big deal in their world. And right. I think the guy that plays Blade in the new MCU movie plays Vector, I think.
Right.
I'm trying to think of what else I can really talk about this. Alita looks weird, but that's about a little weird. Like, it's not enough to take you out of the movie, but when you notice it constantly, it's a little distracting. But other than that, though, like, this world came to life in such a way. I can't picture anybody else but Robert Rodriguez bringing it to life.
Right. Well, I kind of want to talk about you brought up the Hunter Guild that's in this, like, and I was talking about the weird pacing of the anime. Like, there's stuff about, like, the Hunter Guild that was barely touched upon in the anime. It's like almost blink and you miss it. They show up for like one scene and it's like, okay, I don't really get what they are. And then in this movie, it's like you get a grand introduction as to what they are. And in fact, there's a scene with Hugo. Speaking of things like blink if you miss it, there's a scene in the first OVA where he's harvesting, like, I think he's harvesting a spine from someone, but it's so fast that I actually didn't catch it the first time. I had to watch it a second time to notice it, and that's what kind of had this. It made it seem like the two episodes almost had nothing to do with each other, because I didn't even see that scene that actually relates more in the second episode. About her eyes, I didn't think that they were that weird at all. At first I noticed it, like it kind of draws your attention to it, but after like maybe 5-10 minutes, you stop noticing it, and that was like something I was really concerned about, because I kind of see things through an artist's eye. So I'm like, well, you know, in anime, when you have gigantic eyeballs, it's not really meant to be taken literally. It's more of an abstract thing. It's like, it's a functional way to have expressions. You can do a lot of cool things when you draw big eyes on characters. And so in the real, if those characters, most anime characters, if they exist in the real world, they're not going to look like that. So I'm like, why would you put big eyes on an anime character in a live action film? But in this film, it actually kind of works.
Yeah, like it's kind of an otherworldly quality, but not so much so where it's distracting. It's just, eventually it just becomes a part of the movie and you don't notice it.
Yeah, and they're just the right size that they kind of do the thing that I just described, where it allows her to be just a bit more expressive than she would be if it was just the actress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's the thing I always look for. That's kind of my critique, you know, just adapting like one style to another is like, it's like I'm always looking at, like, are we taking things too literally? And I'm glad to say that the live action film does not do that. It actually go ahead.
There was something else that I really loved about this too, and it goes back to the Hunter Warrior guilds too.
Mm-hmm.
the robot designs. There are these things called, I think they're called enforcers or sentinels or something. Those things look dope as fuck. Like they look like the robots, and I keep hating to bring this up. They look like the robots that work for Arasaka in Cyberpunk 2077, those like enforcer droids. They look fucking cool. They look like something like out of like Ed 209's natural evolution from RoboCop. There's so many interesting mecha designs in this. Like one of the special features on the disc, they talk about the rules of rollerball, for example, which is something that was completely omitted in the OVA, because that in the OVA it was the gladiator arena, which is just kind of like a background thing. And then how Gally gets money in the OVA, she just hunts down a bunch of people to get money rather than fighting in the arena. Here she says, well, I'll just win a bunch of money at the motor games, and then we can go to Zalem that way. And then the movie ends with her becoming the next champion, and a blink and you miss it cameo by Jai Courtney, which I am a big fan of Jai Courtney, and it's probably because of his role in Terminator Genesis. I know I'm a weird guy. But anyway, yeah, like I liked how they gave the Hunter Warriors more of a grand entrance here. You get how there's like a code among them. There's different people who do different things. The guy with the dogs was fucking cool. The guy they set up with the Damascus blade that has like a mono, like thin edge to it, which is in every cyberpunk anime ever. They talk about mono wire, like you see that in Shadowrun, you see it in Cyberpunk, you see it in Neuromancer. There's just so many little flourishes here where it brings that world to life. Although I was surprised they did the dog kill, but they didn't show it, so thank God for that.
Oh yeah.
But I was just surprised when they killed the dog and the big guy comes in and says, at least this one has courage. And she still paints her face with the dog's blood. Again, the movie was so stylistic. And I remember, I think it happened late last year, despite the coronavirus pandemic. I think they tried to release this in theaters again to get people back in, just because people were so excited to see it again. And I don't know why or if it did happen or not. But I remember reading about this, like, thinking in the last couple days, this movie has such a cult status around it, and I can't think of many deserving movies in the last couple years. Like, I think because a lot of people liked, say, Mad Max Fury Road. Fantastic movie, glad I saw it. Don't know whether I'd go back and see it again multiple times. I would come back and watch this more than once.
Yeah.
And I don't know, and maybe it's just my love of post-apocalyptic fiction, or maybe it's my love of the cyberpunk genre, but there's just so many things that I think this does right, and seeing this back-to-back with the anime is a great way to spend an afternoon, because literally the animes you can watch in an hour, each episode is only 30 minutes, and you get just enough of a taste of that world. And then the movie really expands out upon it. More like there's so many little plot threads you want to pick up. Like I said, there was talk of a sequel. Christoph Waltz says he hasn't been talked about it, but says who knows. I know Robert Rodriguez wants to do a sequel at like some point. I want to see more mecha designs. I think a friend of mine, Ken, bought the art book to this. I'd be really curious to see what designs were left on the cutting room floor. I'd like to know what kind of merchandise exists for this movie, because I can only imagine what a replica Damascus blade would look like. Stuff like that, like, or if you got those really expensive, like, kind of Figma figures, I think that's what they're called, or hell, a Hot Toys Alita would look really cool. Especially if you got some of the other like kind of cyborgs too. You could do a lot with those designs and a lot of those articulation and little artistic pieces to it as well.
Yeah, I actually didn't. I actually didn't even think to look up to see if there was any merchandise for this. I'd be. Is there none or
I
it
don't
looks
know. I know there's an art book, but I don't know whether there's figures or statues. And if there isn't, that would honestly surprise me. If I were to pick 3 designs from this movie, it would be Alita in both of her bodies, so you could swap. I would do the Damascus Blade Ninja guy and Garishka. I think that's his name. The guy with the uh
claws.
claw cutter blade things.
Mm.
That'd be pretty cool. Or alternatively, if I could have one more figure, I'd have the guy with the cyber dogs and Ito. So those are my top 5 picks for designs from this. I know the art book, my friend Ken says it's really, really, really cool. I don't know how expensive it is because I know stuff like that. It's like a one and done, maybe like a kind of print run. I know there was a 4K Steelbook edition, which means if it's Steelbook, it's probably Best Buy or Mondo. Yeah, I don't know whether there was much merch for this because this movie was PG-13, which means almost anybody can see it.
Holy shit,
I
again.
yeah, which I'm trying to figure if there would be anything else you really could do for this. I mean, if I had my way, because I'm that guy, I would love to see a role-playing game made out of this. I mean, like you could easily turn this into like a Fate Core rule set. You could turn this into I wouldn't run it on D20 just because I'm so over D20 mechanics now. But there's so much exploring in this universe I think you could do. I think you could license a lot of things from this. I know there's the mangas, and I think they're collected in some fairly big editions, but I don't know how many volumes it ran. I know it ran at least 5 because I had 3 of them.
Need to get them now. Because yeah, I've never had the mangas for these. I don't really have a lot of comic books anyway, but I love the art though. God, who? Oh my God, I didn't look this up before the show started. Who drew this? Who drew the original manga? Let's see if I can name I cannot pronounce. But I'm gonna try. Yukito Kishiro. I'm gonna butcher this name. Yukito Koshiro, I believe is his name. And I recognize his art, but I don't think I ever like really did a deep dive into anything he's done. So yeah, I need to get this.
Yeah, like it's something that again, it really speaks well to the cyberpunk genre, and it's just so dramatic. It's something so interesting that I think a lot of people kind of slept on. I mean, despite being a $400 million profit movie, um, I don't see a lot of people outside of like anime dorks kind of talk about it, and I use that term remarkably loosely. Um, like I'm thinking of the big anime movies that are supposed to be coming in the next couple years. I know Cowboy Bebop was filming, but then John Cho hurt himself on set, and he's like recovering from like a broken foot or something. Akira has been in the pipe for years.
Yeah.
Robotech will never happen, just
God.
because Leonardo DiCaprio's company, they want to make it happen, and for whatever reason, it just keeps getting stalled and stalled and stalled. Honestly, the closest we're going to get to a movie is Pacific Rim, and I'm okay with that for the most part.
Yeah. I don't know if I want a Robotech movie just because there's that whole legal thing with
Harmony
Big West.
Gold.
Yeah, Harmony Gold, Big West, all those, and I don't even know if I understand the whole thing anymore. I don't know what's going on with that, but I know that there's some big to do with Macross, and I'm really afraid that if we get a Robotech movie, it'll just be like the third saga, which is not what I want.
I mean, if I had to pick one thing to get adapted, I'd love to see Ava, but it cannot be done live action.
No.
It's too complicated for one movie. You will alienate people. If they ever did an Ava movie, you'd probably see the first 2 angels, and that'd be it. And unless you are willing to commit to like a Transformers like set of 5 movies, it will never happen. Plus, the subject material it's too weird. I know Robin Williams was a big champion of wanting to make that happen. Even Weta Workshops at one point was doing some concept art. I remember in the late 90s going into the 2000s, some concept art leaked. But that will never happen. Cowboy Bebop, I think, stands the best chance of making it to the screen. Like I said, they're already shooting it. I know John Cho, the guy that played Sulu from the new Star Trek movies, is Spike Spiegel. I can't remember the guy who's playing Jet Black, but it's this cool looking black dude. I don't know who's Faye Valentine, but Cowboy Bebop is a story that's fairly easy to adapt because you can pretty much just set it in the Cowboy Bebop universe, and just as long as it has the feel, the music, and the style, you can do whatever you want with it. I'm trying to think of other.
It's very Western friendly.
Yeah,
Whereas Ava is still a little weird yet. I think it's way too early for Ava.
I think you could do a Gundam one, but you'd have to proceed so careful. I think if you did Gundam from the Universal Century, so if you did the original, like War in the Pocket or something like that, if you adapted one of the really big OVAs, you could probably pull it off, as long as you don't bury it in so much lore and crap that people get overwhelmed. Like, what's a new type and what's all this crap? You could probably pull that off. There's one anime, they do have live action movies, but they're only in Japan, so the budget is non-existent. But it was a series called Pat Labor. And Pat Labor is about robotic suits that are piloted by cops. And basically, it's what if people were using mechanized units to, commit crime. So someone takes a construction labor, because that's what they were called, and robs a bank with it. Well, who would react? Well, an armed, cop unit that would have equal strength and the ability to respond to something like that. And there was a couple of OVA movies for the series, which are very good. I really enjoy those. There's a 26 episode anime series, which takes place, I think, between the two movies. And it's, again, really, really interesting. I'm trying to think of other things that could be adapted. One I think that you could pull off now, because the world, I think, is ready for it. I'd love to see somebody do Vampire Hunter D, because we can do that weird, wacky CG out there, weird violence. And the world has enough horror directors who have an eye for that. You could probably pull that off. Hell, Robert Rodriguez could probably do it. It would probably be pretty badass. Because, I mean, look at his From Dusk Till Dawn movies. I'm trying to think of what other animes could be adapted well into the live action.
I think if you were going to do Vampire Hunter D, you have to get the style right. You have to kind of have, you have to make sure he kind of has that Undertaker-ish look with a big broad hat and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's got to be over the top, stylish, but just grounded enough in reality where it's wildly vivid. Not quite WWE Undertaker, but not far off either. I just had this on the tip of my tongue. Okay, one anime adaptation that I'm surprised failed as bad as it did, because I think the source material is great, but how they approached it was terrible, was Netflix a couple years ago did Death Note. And I was so looking forward to this. I had an interview lined up with the director. This is a little bit of behind the scenes for Twig. And I saw the movie and I'm like, yep, not doing that interview now. I bailed because I'm thinking, I can't dress this up, because I was so disappointed. And it's not that the performances in the movie were all bad. I really like the guy that played L. But I'm just like, how do you fuck this up? And because the story is essentially really, really, really simple, but you need the time for it to breathe, for it to be a true mystery. And that's, I think, one of the disadvantages with adapting anime is you need multiple movies or one really solid movie to be expanded. Like, that's why stuff like Akira, I think, would work if it had the proper runtime. Cowboy Bebop, as we discussed, is more about style than adapting any one episode or arc. Gundam, I could see that as a 3-part trilogy to something. But you could never adapt, say, Gundam Wing, because it would be way too fucking out there.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And Ava is too cerebral and weird for its own fucking good. And Robotech is, again, not just the legal things. You have to get it down. And from what I understand of Robotech, because I've only ever seen the first like 30 episodes, there's a lot that can be lost in translation. Yeah, you can get the whole idea of the Zentradi and proto-culture and, you know, the slavery of one race, but then you start bringing in things like the Robotech Masters and all that shit and the Invid, and you'll lose everything. I don't know. It's so hard to bring these movies over or bring these series over and have them work. That's like, and it sucks because there's so many things I'd love to see live action. Hell, one series I've just been getting into recently is My Hero Academia. That series should never be adapted, but I guess they kind of did with Disney's Sky High and Zoom, which is fine.
Yeah.
Because whatever. I'm trying to think of other anime series. Actually, you know what I'd love to see done, but it'll never happen. And this is going to be a hot take that no one's going to like, and people will probably jump on me for this one. I would love to see a really well done Sailor Moon.
That would be interesting.
I don't know how you do it, though, without it being cheesy or not respectful to the source material, because we can do superhero movies so well. I think a magical girl series could be really awesome, especially if it was given a high enough budget to either be a really short series, like an 6-episode miniseries on like HBO or something, or something else entirely. Or I'm trying to think of what else would be kind of fun. Like, one thing that surprised me, that from the last 5 years, I was surprised how well Detective Pikachu worked. Because that's a series that obviously came from a video game, then became the anime, and then became its own thing with Detective Pikachu. That movie should not have worked as well as it did. And I think if Hollywood's willing to take risks, but also get the right people with the right creative vision, doing the writing, the producing, you can pull it off. Because like I said, with Battle Angel, for example, you had the right creative ingredients for it to work. And for a brief time, it was magical. And it, like I said, $400 million is nothing to sneeze at. It made its money back. There was talk of sequels. We don't know what's ever going to happen. But I also don't want something to be so successful where it turns into garbage. And I think a really good example of that would be the Transformers franchise. Because the first Transformers, yeah, because the first Transformers movie by Michael Bay, the first one is okay. The second one has, in my opinion, some moments of cool. Dark of the Moon, I think, is really interesting. Age of Extinction has interesting ideas which go nowhere. And The Last Night is the only movie I actually watched this with my roommate a couple months ago, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? What are they doing? Please stop it now. And I was just so angry at it, and I couldn't believe how bad they fucked it up. And they're trying again with Beast Wars, and I don't know how well that's going to go over, but look at Bumblebee and how successful that was. And you had a director, I think the guy was named Travis Knight, the guy that did Karibo and the Two Strings. That's a guy who understood stop motion. That's a guy who understood animated characters, how they interact with the world. Now, it also helped that you had writers, directors, producers, and a good actress in the lead to ground that movie, but it worked. Other things that could work, I think another Power Rangers movie is inevitable at some point. I'd like to see them even give a try to Kamen Rider. If they don't want to focus on the 5 teenagers with attitude, maybe do it on a single Kamen Rider thing. Because I've got friends of mine that are really into that whole genre of Japanese superhero Sentai stuff. And some of that shit's really cool, really interesting. But it just never got a fair shake over here, because we had Kamen Rider in like the mid 90s, and it went for like a season and never again. Yet Power Rangers is still going today under Hasbro. I don't know, like there's so much cool shit coming out of Japan. There's so much cool shit coming out from around the world that as much as I love the MCU, as much as I love superhero movies and all that stuff, I want to see something a little different. And Battle Angel gave that to me.
Yeah, I think the superhero genre, I don't want to say it's dead, but I think it needs a little bit of a break. And we need something else. And I think there's some good stuff in Japan. Some of the stuff I would like to see is like stuff that kind of stands out a bit more on its own. Like I know you brought up the Sentai stuff, but a lot of Sentai shows just from kind of a casual perspective, they all kind of look the same. Just the way I kind of see it, they kind of all look the same to me. I would like something like Detective Conan, which is a cartoon. I can't believe it's still going on after like I don't know 20 years. Where it's this kid, or actually it's this young adult who gets turned into a kid, and he's living with this bumbling detective, and he's using the guy to solve mysteries and eventually find out who did this to him, who gave him this poison that turned him into a child. And it's such a wacky concept, but there's really nothing else like it. It's like it's almost like Scooby-Doo but with murder. It's like this weekly ongoing thing where like there's a mystery of the week, and it's just this kid solving murders. And sometimes it's a whodunit, but other times they tell you right up front who did it, and it's more like a Columbo where it's like how Conan figures out how Conan solves the mystery, which is I love those episodes. I would love to see that adapted in some way. I don't know if you could do a movie, but maybe like a mini series, like a Netflix series or something like that.
If I had money, I would love to see something adapted from the world of tabletop role playing. And they've been talking about this for years, and it is in the works right now. They're doing something for Dungeons and Dragons, and that's fine. I've seen Game of Thrones, whatever. I want to see them try other things. There's one property that I'd love to see adapted, but I can only imagine how much this would cost. Is if you could adapt the world of Mech Warrior / Battletech. And the main reason I really like that, because it's basically picture Game of Thrones level politics, where there's a lot of infighting and backstabbing and politicking and power maneuvers. But you also have to involve 90-ton war machines going across these worlds, fighting for control and resources, and what houses are married to each other, what political alliances there are. And I wouldn't want to do stuff like the clan invasion, where there's these guys that existed off for centuries and now they're coming back to reclaim their birthright. And it's a whole thing. It's my favorite era in Battletech, but I think it they did it in the TV show, which is on YouTube if you want to find it. I'd like to see that done, especially if you could get like HBO to produce that. And like, here's 10 episodes of Battletech. If you like it, we'll come back and give you a second season. Here is the clan invasion. We'll give you what you want, but you got to be invested in the succession wars first. Or here's the birth of the Star League or whatever. The D&D stuff, the idea I've pitched for the last couple years with this is I know they're really going to want to piggyback on the worlds of 5th edition. So they're really going to focus on the Forgotten Realms. I would love if each season of D&D was a different setting. So the first season, get people's feet wet, is Forgotten Realms. Cool. Next season, you dig into that Castlevania vibe, you do Ravenloft. And you will get people into that world hook, line, and sinker. You take another season, you do Dark Sun. The next season, you do Planescape. And then for the 5th season, which might be the final season, we'll say, you do, I think I said Planescape. And you have all the heroes from 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th seasons come together at the city of Sigil to fight the Lady of Pain or something. And you could have this epic, grand fantasy adventure that spans multiple looks, genres, and feels, and do something really expansive. Because I think Game of Thrones opened the door to having fantasy on TV and be it something really special. And I know Amazon's Lord of the Rings is going to be cool, set during the Third Age, which is before the War of the Ring, but after the Hobbit. So it's just before the Fellowship starts. Okay, sure, why not? It's not during the era of the Silmarillion, so I don't have to learn to speak fucking Elvish. Okay, cool. There's another world I'd like to see adapted, but I don't know how you do it without it being D&D with the serial numbers filed off. There's a game called Pathfinder from the company Paizo, and their world of Galarian is really well thought out. And I think Galarian would work better as an animated series. If you could get me a 26 episode order for that, I'd so be down for that. D&D, I think, can survive better in live action, because I think seeing iconic monsters like a rust monster, a beholder, a basilisk, a lich, stuff like that would be really awesome, and not have fucking Marlon Wayans and Justin Whalen as your fucking lead guys. My God, Mr. Neil, we've got to do a commentary on that shit.
Oh my God. We can do that. We can do that. I think we're going to have to.
Yeah, because it's so weird, because like tabletop role playing, for example, and I didn't mean to jump onto this topic, but has really exploded in the last 5 to 6 years since D&D 5th edition really came into its own, and with the launch of shows like Critical Role. It's showing that Hollywood and other big media are taking risks. Like, I never thought I'd see an epic fantasy show like Game of Thrones on TV ever. Like, the last time we saw a fantasy show was fucking Hercules, and fuck Kevin Sorbo, by the way. And, you know, we hadn't seen that in so long. I think the closest we'd get is maybe Vikings and Black Flag, or not Black Flag, Black Sails. But those are more historical dramas than anything else. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. There's just so much possibility out there in the worlds of anime, gaming, tabletop role playing. Like, hell, if I had more money than God, I would love, because there was like a tease the other day, and we don't know how much truth there is to it. I know Henry Cavill or Geralt from The Witcher, which I never thought I'd see a Witcher TV series on Netflix of all places. There's a possibility he could be doing something Mass Effect. And you know what? That's not a bad Commander Shepard. I'm okay with this. As long as they have the guy doing the voice of Garrus being Garrus, I'm fine with that shit. And you can cast whoever you want as Liara. I don't care, as long as she looks the part. And Tally has to be Tally. But I would be fine with that. Like, there's so many adaptations out there that are rich to be done. So stop giving us Transformers for a while.
God.
Stop doing anime that don't be adapted. Like, I don't need another Dragon Ball Evolution. Give me more stuff like Battle Angel that has a vision to it. Give me Cowboy Bebop, because clearly you've got the right people in there. But take a risk on certain small projects too, and I think you'll be genuinely surprised what people will flock to the theaters to see. And I think the world is very bright for a lot of these smaller adaptations. And I don't know, I think people will be pleasantly surprised. So I don't know, that's all I really got to say, is I think more people just need to just take chances on stuff.
Yeah. Well, I gotta say, like, anytime I have you on the show, I just sit here and I watch the clock spin. I think you've been talking like 85% of the show. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, it's nice to be this passionate about media and stuff like that, because as much as I get a chance to talk about this on Twig, I don't get a chance to really expand upon my thoughts about this with someone who kind of knows what the fuck I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, like, originally we came on here to talk about Battle Angel, and long story short, you should check out both. I mean, finding the anime is going to be a bit of a trick, but it's on YouTube if you look.
Yeah.
The movie is so worth it. It's worth 2 hours of your time. And I guess what we want you to walk away from this, in my opinion, is try something different. Be willing to open up your chances or open your mind up to different things. Like, I know I just finished ragging on Transformers, but Bumblebee was really good.
Yeah. You know
And that's worth your time.
what's really nice about Bumblebee is it takes what the first Michael Bay movie, it takes what was good about the first Michael Bay movie and just makes it the whole movie. What was great about the first one was just the story about the kid and the car. And that was the best part of the whole movie, and then it just ruined it by turning it into the 80s cartoon. Which I hate to say because I love the 80s cartoon, but it was like I'm an adult now, and this is kind of dumb, and I I think you need to be with. I don't think you can make something like Transformers anymore, which is kind of stupid because it makes a lot of money. So maybe I'm stupid by saying that, but like I think as far as like making a good story, you need to decompress a little and like just get it down to like what works for a story. And I think the Bumblebee movie does that.
Yeah, like it gives you the essence of Transformers without it having to beat you over the head. I mean, I didn't normally like the fact that Bumblebee couldn't talk for the longest time in those movies, but then Bumblebee talking through the radio just became a part of it, and I was okay with that, where it wasn't overpowering, it was comical, but it worked as well. And I don't know, there's just so much that we still have to learn from adaptations. I kind of wish the discourse around superhero movies would take a bit of a break. However, that being said, as of we record this episode, WandaVision has just finished, and that was a wonderful character piece. Once you get past the first couple episodes, which are admittedly kind of fun, kind of quirky, they set the tone, they make a lot more sense later. Seeing how that series ended does a lot for that character, something that wasn't going to be explored as Wanda Maximoff being a background character for 5 minutes in Infinity War and of Captain America's Civil War. Now she has 6 or 9 hours to breathe and develop, and that's great. If we got more superhero TV that does that level of depth in 6 to 9 hours, I'm fine with that. I don't need 24 episodes of The Flash.
Yeah.
For example, like give me stuff with depth and meaning as opposed to spectacle. I mean, yeah, it's cool. I saw Gorilla Grodd and King Shark and Mirror Master. That's fine. That's cool. But if it takes 8 episodes to get to Agatha Harkness, I'm fine with that. So I want my media to mean more. That's why I'm glad Battle Angel, for example, took the story of Battle Angel, gave you just enough there to get you interested into that world, give it to you over the course of 2 hours. You want to know more, you're asking questions, but you're not so lost as you're like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really good character story, and I think that's what makes it pop, makes it such an enjoyable movie to watch. And I gotta say, I was never bored in the movie. I have this rule called the 100-minute rule, which is I prefer movies that are around 100 minutes, but if you go over, I kind of expect the movie to kind of justify its length. And Alita Battle Angel absolutely does that. It felt like the right length. It didn't feel like it went on too long. It was great.
Yeah, like it's literally a visual feast. There's so much to take in. There's stuff you're going to want to go back and rewatch. The special features, while not a lot, introduce a lot of stuff to the world if you want to know more. And it's a nice supplemental material. And you don't need to have read the manga. You don't need to have seen the OVA to really appreciate it. Though watching both back to back is a nice way to spend an afternoon.
Interesting.
And I think it's probably one of the best adaptations I've seen in a really, really long time.
Yeah. So I think we pretty much covered everything. So I think we're gonna get out of here. The name of the show is the Big Bad Movie Show. It's part of ravinghipster.com, which is a Patreon supported series of shows. I got a movie show, I got a gaming show, I've got various topic shows. I got a bunch of like Geekcast stuff hidden in the archive too. Just all sorts of random silly, willy-nilly silly crap that I have on my Patreon. And again, it's just $2 a month. You can download tons of shows, cancel anytime. I'm just happy that you gave me a chance to entertain you. And why don't you give the people a little plug for This Week in Geek?
All right, folks. So if you want to find me around the worldwide weird, you can find me at thisweekingeek.net. I'm also on TikTok and Instagram at Birdman Dodd. Same with Twitter. I tend to post a lot of things about cats, occasionally some pop culture musings, and I'm always in the realm looking to provide the good fight for the people of Ontario and all around the world. So if you want some positivity and some kitties, I'm certainly your guy for it. And as I say whenever I sign off on my own show, be excellent to each other.
Live free or die hard.
After the coronavirus pandemic, I'm like, that's probably not the best thing to say anymore.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that sounds, wow. Anyway, we're going to get out of here. Thank you again for listening, and we're out.